Good evening. I call to order the February 17, 2021 business meeting of the Cincinnati Board of Education. We welcome everyone and request that you please silence your cell phones and electronic devices. I'm going to ask Ms. Bates to please lead us in the pledge.
Okay, I'm going to have a little help here too. I pledge allegiance,
to the flag of the United States,
of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Justice for all.
and thank you, Joey. Okay, Ms. Wagner, please call the roll.
Mrs. Bates.
Present.
Ms. Bolton.
Present.
Mrs. Bowers.
Present.
Mr. Lindy.
Here.
Mr. Messer.
Present.
Mr. Morosky.
Here.
President Jones.
Here. Members of the public who wish to speak may do so by clicking the chat button now. The chat feature will be open for the next 5 minutes for your request. Please submit your name, your affiliation to the district, your school community, your topic, and your contact information if you want a direct response to any questions you might have. Okay, I need a motion to approve the minutes from the business meeting, January 16, 2021, special meeting, January 20th, 2021, the business meeting, January 20th, 2021, special meeting, February 8, 2021, and the business meeting, February 8, 2021. So moved. Second?
Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, minutes are approved as presented. Ms. Bowers, please present the February 5th, 2021 Student Achievement and District Instructional Performance Committee meeting report.
Yes, ma'am. Madam President, I have before me the minutes from the February 5th, our first Student Achievement and District Instructional Performance Committee meeting of the 2021 year. So in this meeting, we had election of a chair. Committee member Bolton nominated me. Committee member Bowers as the chair. Ben Lindy, our committee member, seconded the motion, and I accepted that nomination. We also approved the 2021 meeting schedule, which is the first Friday of the month. Next meeting being March 5th at 2 o'clock. Our time is usually from 2 to 3:30, but we went a little bit over. We had some additional community presentations at this particular meeting, but the plan is to be from 2 to 3:30. We reviewed the work. I presented the work plan for the committee to review. In addition, the district instructional leadership team also has that work plan to look over to ensure that it aligns with our district's strategic plan. As I explained before, we had a couple of presentations from our community. The first presenter was Ms. Keeman and her daughter, who presented a literacy program at this committee meeting, and she asked if the district would be interested in using her presented literacy kits for reading specialists to use as a station station work within CPS schools with students. Action items that were taken away from that was that the committee request that the program be reviewed by the district leadership to review the curriculum. And also, I believe General Counsel or the superintendent referenced that we would check with General Counsel to determine if there was any conflict of interest, as Ms. Keeman and maybe her daughter were both trained through the district, and this may be a conflict of interest with that literacy program, but we were going to get some feedback from that action at the March 5th committee meeting. Also, the second community presenter was Mr. Yusuf Munir and some of the additional students that are part of the Young Activists group or coalition, and they presented on Fix Our Schools in reference to restorative justice diminishing the focus of punishment. They used a lot of data from the Civil Rights Data Collection from 2017 to 2018 regarding Black students in CPS being consequenced or disciplined at a higher rate than counterparts. Mr. Lindy suggested to this group to, seek out how to become a part of the Speak Up, Speak Out group. Superintendent Murphy also explained that this group will have an opportunity, or members of this group that could join the Speak Up group in the future. Committee member Bowden also suggested for that group that they seek out information from Aiken principal Ms. Lisa Vata regarding creative measures that are used there at the school to decriminalize the behaviors of students. Mr. Manier presented his data, and then it was also recommended that we look at the police data to have reference in regards to the proposal or the suggestion. We did not have many action items here other than we got the information. I believe there's a link to that presentation for the board members to review if they would like. Initially, when I got this request, which was by way of board member Morowski, my idea was that this should go to health and safety, since that's where discipline kind of lives in our committees, and I didn't know where that ended up, other than I don't think that they were presenting to them. So as a board, I'm not sure on what we want to do with that data. So moving on, Mr. Leach presented to our group about update on the Iowa Walnut Hills interest test or assessment. What he did was he gave us information on how the Ohio whole grade gifting screening worked, meaning that areas of focus was cognitive ability, the academic in writing and reading, and also the academic ability in mathematics. He reminded us that this is an assessment that's used for K2 to determine gifted and exceptional students, and also in the grade band of 3-6. And then I think CPS uses that to determine for second and sixth grade. Sixth grade for Walnut Hills interest, and second grade for gifted and exceptional. But we also, this test has also met the requirements to meet interest into our gifted and exceptional program at Spencer and at Cheviot, in addition to Walnut Hills. The Iowa test is used for that. He reviewed in 2019 how we came about the Iowa assessment, changing from the Terra Nova into the Iowa, and how that was along some concordant study that he explained. And just a reminder that the Terra Nova has been used in the district since 2011. And so this was a time to revamp and consider proposals for a different test. And that's how it was agreed upon to use the Iowa test versus the Terra Nova, who had, I guess their contract had ended. In the fall of 2020, he explained for the assessment was given during blended learning for October 12th through November 20th, and it was available at school sites for students to take the test, and in their individual buildings. He also explained that students were referred either by parents to take the test or guardians, staff members to take the test, and he went into explaining how families were communicated to about the assessment being available to take. I think it was a small typo here, and I probably overlooked this, but I had expressed concerns about the low number of African American students in neighborhood schools that are actually passing the test. And so Deputy Superintendent Amat explained that, we talked about the strong rigor in regarding AP and just curriculum overall, with college prep moving back to lower grades and help with preparation for more students to be able to obtain success in passing this test. And so we talked about that in a different time and vein in student achievement. Mr. Chambers was able to join us, the principal at Walnut Hills, to talk to us about the Student Success Center, which is finding different ways to lowering attrition rates, progression of students being able to sustain themselves basically at Walnut Hills. Mr. Chambers reported that they received a grant through Accelerate Great Schools to actually staff the Student Success Center. And a full report of that is available upon request in the board's office. Mr. Chambers also, Deputy Superintendent Amat, we talked about graduation process progress. And last year in 2019, 2020, we at the end, at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, we were able to graduate 82% seniors. And I believe, I think this is a typo also, and I missed that. It's not, they believe, and I think Deputy Superintendent Lamont can confirm, I believe it's 70% of students are currently on track to graduate, not 79. I think it's 70, which, lends to why we need it for our high schools to get back into the school building. I think it's this week is their first week back. She also reported the individual plans are being developed to ensure that students have enough credits for pathways and move into graduation. A copy of the Walnut Hills entrance exam for fall 2020 is available also in the board office. Cheviot Marquis, good news. I found out that we were able to get the marquee that identifies Cheviot School as that, Cheviot School. I think in the past meetings in December, I inquired about why Cheviot School did not have a sign on their marquee. There's nothing on the school that identifies that that's Cheviot School. It's just a marquee with no name. And so now we were able to do that. So kudos to our team for doing that. Other business. We talked about the evaluation for the superintendent coming up due March 1st in our meeting. And I believe on February 22nd, the superintendent is going to give us a report, an updated report overall thus far in this school year for the board members to review. Committee member Bolton reported the treasurer's final evaluation is also due on March 1st. She wanted to coordinate that in the timeline. Committee member Bolton inquired about schools teaching African American history. And she also stated that maybe in the year after next, and I'm thinking it's 2022 to 2023, it was a suggestion or maybe an ideal or a hope that there would be an AP African American history course for college-bound students. We talked about life courses for high school students. And the administration is going to look into that. And I think my inquiry in that was around budgeting and finances to be also related to that, because that has been a request from several high schoolers about having that information or even that knowledge. One action item from there was Ms. Bolton would like to have more discussion about some of the educational opportunities that was also discussed during our meeting. Meeting that was adjourned at 4:00, and this is the Student Achievement and Direct Instruction Leadership Committee meeting minutes, and I present them as written.
Thank you. Do board members have questions or comments? Ms. Bolton?
First of all, I really appreciate the membership of this committee. I think we're going to continue the good tradition of student achievement and kind of pushing the envelope. Appreciate the chairman pushing the demographics of the advanced coursework. I did want to add but emphasize, if I could, if the city chair will allow me, I did want to emphasize that we brought forward Mr. Messer's concept and idea that we need more civic education introduced into our efforts. I love that the chair is interested in the life course, but also, again, have reiterated two things that we're hearing nationally. One from the Homeland Security Committee, and that is to re-emphasize Holocaust education in public schools, and then also digital literacy. And indeed, the administration's been great in getting back to us very, very quickly about both of those. The other thing was Mr. Chambers gave a great summary of something that I know Mrs. Bowers and I, and probably Mr. Lindy, since he's an alum of Walnut, that Success Center at Walnut, which is funded, if you will, by a grant that is ending. And you just start to think that maybe that would be something that would be helpful at all of our high schools, if indeed we could possibly fund it, where you target particular kids that might be needing additional, and it's not support, it's not remediation, it's additional kinds of information about their learning styles. And he seemed very excited about its success. So wonderful meeting. And the final thing too, that the young folks that did present the data regarding the civil rights issues out of the Ohio Department of Ed, National Department of Ed, this committee has been, and this district has been using that particular form of information since the 2013-14 year. So I appreciated their sourcing and their research that they presented us. It's very intuitive, very informative and intuitive.
Okay, any other questions or comments about the FACT committee meeting minutes? Okay, I need a Mr. Morosky.
I just wanted to highlight Ms. Bolton's point. I've seen presentations from that group, the Young Activist Coalition, and I know, they're on our hearing of the public every board meeting. And if that's all you hear, I mean, that's one side of their activism, which I think is valid and good. I do think it's worth highlighting that other side, the research and the legwork they put in. And I met with them earlier today, and they had Iris Rowley with them. They've got community members of great respect working with them and helping guide them. And so I just kind of wanted to, say, I heard what Ms. Bolton said, and I think I just wanted to highlight that. That's all.
Okay, thank you. If there are no more comments, I need a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Who seconded? Mr. Morosky, thank you.
Joe did.
Joey.
Joey
did. Okay. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Minutes are approved as presented. Okay, so next item, Deputy Superintendent Ahmad, please introduce our first presentation.
Absolutely. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to introduce Assistant Superintendent Bunty, Ms. Bunty. She will be doing a presentation on the teacher pipeline.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Deputy Amat. I want to take a little bit of time this afternoon to share the work that we are doing in the realm of thinking about how we recruit, hire, and retain teachers. So as I wait for our slide deck to pop up here, you can go to the next two slides, I think, please. One more. So we are incredibly passionate about maximizing student achievement, which you can see our passion statement on the next slide. And one of the ways in which we do that is by hiring and retaining a really diverse and high-performing teacher workforce. So our why is exactly that. We want to maximize student achievement. This afternoon, though, we're going to dig a little bit deeper into the how. So on the next slide, you can see that we have two key messages for you this afternoon. We know that we can't rely on a single method. The talent pool is competitive and actually really small. So more than ever, we have to use evidence-based practices to recruit, to hire, and retain the very best teachers that we possibly can. This is contained within our strategic plan, as you can see on the next slide, under optimized capabilities. And specifically, it is contained within goal 4 of that piece. So without further ado, I would like to introduce you to Sarah Brody this afternoon. Again, we're kind of waiting for our slides to catch up here a little bit. There we go. And she's going to tell us more about the how of how we are going to do it. Sarah?
Thank you, Susan. Good afternoon, everyone. On the next slide, I'm going to go ahead and get started talking about our 3 main priorities when it comes to cultivating and retaining a diverse and high-performing teacher workforce. What you see here is really emphasizing the research that has been extremely clear about the benefits of teacher diversity, particularly for our students of color. Black students who have access to Black teachers see benefits in terms of high school graduation, college enrollment, and even taking advanced placement courses. As a nation, we are seeing extreme parity issues when it comes to diversity of our teacher workforce compared to our student demographics. So nationally, about 18% of our teacher workforce identify as people of color versus nearly half of our student population. Next slide, please. As we work to cultivate greater parity here at Cincinnati Public Schools, we first need to look at our starting point. And so we took a look at our data, and we see that while our student demographics show about 3/4 of our students identifying as people of color, 27% of our current teacher workforce identify as people of color, and in our incoming classes of new teachers, just 16% do so. So we have a gap to close. Next slide, please. Our strategies for achieving greater teacher diversity, as Susan said, rely on a diverse portfolio of pathways into the teaching profession here at Cincinnati Public Schools. So the three main buckets that we're focused on include targeted recruitment of our alternative and traditional educator preparation programs. What that means is we can look at the data to see clearly which programs enroll larger proportions of candidates of color and target those in our recruitment efforts. We can also leverage innovations such as Grow Your Own programming, which is currently happening at Aiken High School in partnership with Miami University, and leveraging internal referrals for new hires. I'm excited to talk with you a little bit more tonight about a new program we've recently launched, the Internal Teacher Pipeline Program at CPS. Next slide, please. We've seen a lot of interest across our community to support folks who currently serve in support roles, such as paraprofessionals, to find their way into the teaching profession here at Cincinnati Public Schools. This is a community of professionals who have shown deep commitment to our students and to our community. We have recently launched this program and will soon be accepting applications for our first cohort of 25 candidates who we are looking to prepare as new teachers in our district and to achieve teacher licensure. We look to replicate that 25 cohort model each year. These candidates will be selected based on demonstrated evidence of working with students toward academic goals, and they will be able to articulate a pathway toward completing the education requirements and licensure requirements needed to teach in our schools as teachers of record. We also have an advisor who's going to be helping them along their path to make sure that they can achieve their goals. Next slide, please. Our second priority in cultivating a diverse and high-performing teacher workforce at CPS is really around early hiring, where the research is extremely clear that late hiring can lead to missed opportunities to hire the best teachers, and it can also exacerbate a leaky teacher pipeline where folks who are waiting to get hired choose other pathways. We also know that teachers who are hired earlier are more effective in terms of advancing student learning, and that those hired later in the year, like in June and July, are more likely to leave, and so that poses a retention issue. Next slide, please. So we looked at our data to see when we tend to hire new teachers here at CPS over the last 3 years, and we saw some real bright spots, a lot of hiring happening in the early spring, which is our sweet spot. We also saw that about 1/3 of folks are getting hired after July, and so that's something we want to work to address. Next slide, please. We're going to do that through a couple of ways. First is ongoing early blanket contracts being offered. Second is really capitalizing on our student teachers and cultivating them and converting them to full-time hires expeditiously. And thirdly, we are understanding our vacancies more astutely and identifying those who intend to return and those who do not earlier. Next slide, please. And finally, our third priority area in this work is around retention, the other side of the pipeline. And this statistic here is pretty powerful. When a great teacher leaves a school, it can take 11 hires to find one of comparable quality. And what that makes me think about when I think about retention is how we also have to have an eye toward how we are thinking strategically about keeping our greatest and best. Next slide, please. Mirroring national data, where NCES has looked at teacher retention longitudinally and sees that about 17% of teachers leave the profession within 4 years. Our 1-year turnover rate is 14%. Our 3-year turnover rate is 17%, so fairly on par with the national numbers. We looked at this data and did an equity check because we want to make sure we aren't losing teachers disproportionately based on race. We did not see in these data that our Black teachers are leaving at a higher rate than our white teachers, but we want to continue to keep a close eye on that. And per the earlier slide I just showed you, we also want to make sure that we're not bleeding our top performers. The good news here is that our top performers are tending right now to leave at a lower rate than the average, but we want to continue to monitor that carefully. And so on the next slide, I just want to talk to you a little bit about how we think about retaining performers. So when you come to CPS to be a teacher, we want to meet you with the following. We want to meet you with a district that's focused on engagement and where your voice is heard and where you know you matter and where you can see yourself staying. We want to meet you with an evaluation system that fosters growth and development and helps you see a path toward improving your practice and provides professional learning aligned to that. And then we want to help you lead, if you so wish to do so, without giving up your teaching role in the classroom. And so we want to help our excellent teachers have pathways into leadership roles and provide them with excellent training and support so that they can lead effectively. And we've launched some really exciting work this year around teacher leadership, where folks who are in those roles are getting specific role training to engage in coaching their peers, leading their teams effectively, and communicating critically. And we also want to make sure that when you're here at CPS, you are being told if you're doing a great job that you're doing a great job, and you're being invited and asked to stay with us. That you're getting ongoing coaching and mentoring and support. That when you need extra support, that you have a referral to our fabulous peer assistance and review program, and that we're monitoring that data all along the way to help you be successful. And so with that, I would love to go to the next slide and thank you all for your time this evening and answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Ms. Brody, and we'll open it up. I see Mr. Morosky, Ms. Bowers, Mr. Lindsay.
Awesome. Thank you, President Jones. Hello, Ms. Brody. Thanks for the great presentation. Just a couple of logistical questions that I think might be dumb questions, but I've always been told to ask if you think they're dumb questions. So regarding the piece, and Ms. Bunty knows this, when I was in student achievement for a couple years, I brought this up a couple times about the sort of pipeline of para or whoever it might be that might want to be a teacher. And so I am over the moon about this. I think this is great. So my two logistical questions that I assume I know the answer to, but I shouldn't do that. One, when we talk about selecting people, I assume there's an application process. We don't just go and say, you're the one. And then two, are we footing the bill for this?
Yeah, so I can take those, Mr. Morosky. So first of all, absolutely, we actually put together a panel and a rubric to select folks into the program via an application. So that will be done that way. And we have prioritized, though, folks who are interested in teaching in higher need subject areas and grade levels, because that's really important on the demand side. And then to your second question about are we footing the bill for this? Yes, we are through our Title IIA federal grant dollars, which are connected to teacher pipelines. Yes.
Great. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Bowers.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Brody and Assistant Superintendent Bunting. And I want to give you kudos, but I want to get clarity. You said that the internal teacher pipeline was new. For some reason, I think that this was presented maybe a year and a half ago, that this is what you guys were beginning to do. Is that correct? About a year and a half ago? Because I remember attending a The day in the life in Cincinnati or something at Aiken. I think Julia in the Glacio was over. Okay, so and I think that was presented. So I'm saying that because I'm thinking that you guys have been doing this for a while, and I want to see how has it been going since you started, because I don't believe it's brand new. I think you guys have started doing internal. Yeah.
Yeah, so there are two different programs. The one that Sarah was referencing in terms of the paras moving into teacher roles, that one's new, where we're taking a look at being able to fund that program fully for our employees, those folks who have been with us and who wish to stay with us. The other program that you may be thinking about that isn't new is the Aiken program, that where young people are moving up through high school into teacher prep programs, and that is maybe the one that you're thinking.
Okay. And then I'm delighted to hear about, because I know about the statistics about the African American students or students of color who see someone that looks like them, higher probability of sustaining themselves at school, doing better academically. So I'm glad you guys are really are looking at that. I mean, that's been some data for a few years now about that, but I know that some charter schools, that was kind of their draw for some students, and I'm glad that we're doing that to increase our staff of color, because there is some credence to that. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lindy.
Thanks, President Jones. I wanted to share just some positive feedback, and I had one question. I think that focusing on this issue feels so important, and I want to say thank you. I love the data that you all were able to provide, both in terms of the impact of having a teaching force that reflects the background of kids, and also what our numbers are like within CPS. I want to say thank you for that. I also think that the language around equity checks and like having one here was so great. Both that you check to see whether or not there's a disproportionate loss rate for teachers of color, and that the result happened to be a good result, that we don't see one. I think both of those things were great. I just wanted to say thank you. I think a question I had was, as you're thinking about strategies, are you thinking at all about like recruitment sources? And, like whether there are certain sources of new teachers who have been traditionally more diverse than others, or more a higher quality, or both, and ways to be strategic on the recruitment side too?
Yeah, absolutely, Mr. Lindy. So as I mentioned, we're looking at the Title IIA data, which really breaks down candidate enrollment at teacher prep programs by race and subject area to drive our recruitment efforts. And we're also asking our principals, where are your best folks coming from, and triangulating all of that to inform where we're spending our limited time and resources on recruitment.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Bolton.
Thank you. I mean, besides parents and grandparents and older brothers and sisters who are the first teachers, single most important thing is to have the best person possible in every single classroom. It will change the world. And I'm so excited that we are emphasizing this. I am proud to represent school boards in Ohio on the Education Standards Board. And so I want to share a couple of things, several things real quickly. One is the emphasis to headhunt among charters and parochial schools. There are great teachers in those schools and probably are looking for a livelihood that is better compensated, possibly. Please do that. Headhunt. There's also a tremendous program called Troops to Teachers. And I know we're familiar with it, but you can find a remarkable amount of diversity in that pipeline. You can also find a remarkable pipeline of diversity using also, and this is something that our good friend Ozzie Davis has always emphasized, recruit among our coaches. People that like to work with young people that may not yet have the certification, but they might have the degree. And I'm not sure, and I have a question before I say some more stuff, but we're still using the alternate educational license AEL, we're still using that. Perhaps that can be something regarding moving our coaches. The other point, too, is the preschool expansion is providing a tremendous pipeline for early educators. I would also suggest, hey kid, I would also suggest that, believe it or not, and I believe it, and I think we should be very proud of it, this Cincinnati Federation of Teachers contract gives you several avenues to recruit regarding more money, also special partnerships. Look at that contract because it establishes partnerships with some of our universities, and our superintendent has expanded those partnerships significantly, where you say, you will come and work with us even on a part-time basis. It's not just student teaching, it's other stuff, and you'll have a leg up. So look at that CFT contract for those partnerships and also those other opportunities. The other one that is quite interesting is that the state of Ohio has provided equity plans. So Assistant Superintendent Bunty probably needs to, and I know she does already, look at the equity assignments, which is very important for maintaining, not just recruiting. Because there are areas, and Mr. Morosky and I have discovered this when we were on student achievement together, there are inadequacies regarding our equity assignments. And that's something to be looking at. But look at CFT. And the Strive people 3 or 4 years ago started a study, and this may be more than 3 or 4 years ago, about which universities are producing the most successful candidates for us. Because there are great differences, but there's already some kind of study. It was totally kind of knowable and predictable, but boy, this is important. And finally, since we are going to have lower enrollment this year and perhaps higher staffing, you have a great opportunity regarding assignments this year. And nobody's better at that than the superintendent. And I would just encourage you to really go for all of those if possible, headhunt and troops to teachers, and then also looking at that CFT contract and also our expansion of preschool to get folks into early education. We can do it and then assign people properly and then hold them accountable. Thanks so much. Nothing's more important than having the best teacher.
Okay, some great recommendations from the board. I think Ms. Bolton gave 9 herself, but that's great. But again, thank you for a great presentation, and we look forward to hearing more soon. Okay. All right, moving on. Deputy Ahmad, introduce our second presentation.
Yes, our next presentation is from Cincinnati Preschool Promise. We have Ms. Shara Fisher-Jackson with us. Shara?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share with you. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
And there is our slide deck. As always, I think it was 2020 when I last shared with you all and reported to you all. Our mission and our goal remains to provide access to high-quality preschools. This year, we're going to make sure that we could maximize the number of students that we reached, to have them enrolled in attending preschool regularly, to make sure that we were supporting every preschooler's education trajectory by supplementing what happened in the classroom, making sure that we continue to empower our providers and provide them with the resources that we need, because our community providers are our direct conduit to our families, and making sure that we continue to push in that space of making sure the early childhood education workforce, talent pipeline, equitable wages continue to occur. So on the next slide, what you will see is what we have created based on the goals and strategies that the CPP Board of Managers approved for this calendar year. And it is basically a dashboard that gives you kind of an overview, if we could scroll up a little bit, of all of our strategies and goals and where we are on those targets we gave everything kind of a rating of a red, yellow, and green in dashboard fashion, where the red says we are off track so far, we don't think we can get it back. The yellow means we have some challenges, but we have some mitigation strategies in place, and the greens mean that we're on track. And you can see there are no reds on our dashboard, and that we have 7 active greens on our project. So that's really going very well for us. There are some things that I want to highlight for you on here, and that is looking at our enrollment numbers under our key measures. Our first big bucket is kindergarten ready, that focuses on tuition assistance, and we have 616 preschoolers that are currently enrolled. That's about 70% of what our enrollment was last year. We're proud of that because it's more than our goal was set for COVID. But we also recognize that's about the same that it is for all of the Ohio local preschool initiatives around the state. Very proud of that number, but we have hit our target for this year, and are pleased to say a little bit more than our target at 102% of goal. A new initiative that we have that you can also see in the first bucket of kindergarten readiness is really to up our family engagement activities, how we're going to be doing that outreach with products like Ready Rosie, ABC Mouse, learning through art, because we really heard the cry to say not only math and literacy that gets a child ready for kindergarten, but that social emotional learning piece as well. Our community engagement strategies are expanded with our ambassador program and new initiative of supporting preschool transition. So this is kind of a snapshot that I wanted to share. We'll send this out every other month as we report to the Preschool Promise Board as well. It tells you our year-to-date activities with our key accomplishments, as well as the things that we're currently focusing on for this quarter. So I'll take a breath and see if there are any questions before we go to the next slide.
Any specific questions related to this, to the information thus far? If not, we'll move on, and you can always ask questions at the end. Go ahead, Ms. Jackson.
On the next slide, because we know the dashboard is so full of information, our metrics and our key measures and where we are, we wanted to highlight some specific things that have happened this year. Our parent outreach and engagement, our ambassador program has been launched, where we have a group of, our target is to get 30 individuals and 30 organizations that are spokespersons for Preschool Promise, that are using their influence on social media and with their stakeholders and audiences to share the message of the importance of preschool, to make sure that we are maximizing enrollment, and to make sure that we keep our stakeholders, the community, and taxpayers aware of what is happening with the Preschool Promise. They convened for the first time this month. They were very excited. They have key activities and tasks to do. So if you see someone out and about or on Zoom with their Preschool Promise ambassador shirt, know they have been well trained. They are on the team and they are promoting Preschool Promise. We also are expanding our Preschool Chat so that we have one every other week. And those are topics and issues that have come to us from parents or providers that they want to talk about. There's one on potty training. We've done one on vaccines. They're hot topics that parents really want to hear about. We bring explicit and we brought up to engage parents in a different way and let them know that the Preschool Promise here is to support them in every aspect of their child's learning experience. In terms of community provider engagement and support, we have a new provider council for 2021 of 7 providers that are providing us with insight, information, direct feedback, support, request, criticism, all of those things, so that we are directly tapped into those providers to know how we're doing and what we need to do to move forward. We also have initiated coffee and conversations that happen every other Friday morning solely for providers to drop in, gather information, share data and best practices to create that environment for them. In terms of special projects, we are continuing to convene quarterly with the Ohio Local Preschools Initiative, and our focus for this quarter has not only been on data, what we're going to drive, what we think is important. We heard from the Ohio Department of Education on where they are in kindergarten readiness and new developments there, but we also had a focus on best practices and strategies that we were each using in our cities to promote racial equity, not only in how families and children access preschools, but also how we supported providers and teachers. So having that statewide look and learning from each other is really helping us. I'm pleased to say that we continue to work very well with Vera Brooks in being the best partner that we have in new kindergarten transition strategies. And we have not only had a series of events, but a real tactical strategy this year that will involve a panel of experts, that will have CPS teachers, that will have preschool promise providers, and also parents engaged in conversations to say, is your child ready? How do you know they're ready? How can you help them get ready? And then the tactical piece of how you can enroll in kindergarten. That'll be featured in our preschool chats, our coffee and conversations, our social media posts, and finally a virtual kindergarten transition and enrollment fair that we'll be having in late March, early April. And we've done some really phenomenal ways of a complete redesign from top to bottom on our CPS website so that it is more accessible for parents. It has more information and resources for families, and that we are able to automate many of our forms for providers as requested. So that is kind of the snapshot of where we are with the Preschool Promise.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. Board members, do you have questions or comments? Ms. Bowers, Mr. Lindy, Mr. Messer.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Fisher Jackson, for your update, and congratulations on that being in the red on any place of your dash card. That is impressive. Also, for kindergarten readiness, congratulations on the parent engagement initiative and the kindergarten readiness. Can you tell me the number of preschoolers enrolled? I think I missed that currently.
So the current number of preschools actively enrolled is 616. Okay. That was as of this update on January 17th. So we know that we'll have additional, but until all that data is validated, walked through with our team, is when we'll have an update. What you'll see in the left column is we actually have 626 that have been approved, but until they attend at least one day, they don't show up on the active chart of us as current enrollment. I will also say we're finding that the largest sections of children that have been denied this year are children who are too old or too young. Very few of those children are out of district, and very few are over the income qualifications. Our biggest categories now are too old and too young for denials.
And is that in alignment with the number this time last year, or is that more? Do you know?
More.
Okay. And then I was glad to hear about your continued strong relationship with our director, Vera Brooks. So I'm looking forward to that transition to kindergarten. Easy collaboration and transition. So thank you for your update.
Thank you. Mr. Lindy.
Thank you, President Jones. Sure, I just wanted to say congratulations and thank you. I think that this issue of getting as many kids as possible access to a great preschool feels like maybe the most important thing that could happen for children in Cincinnati. And so I think that the cause and issue that you're working on feels incredibly important. I also think to have that level of strategic clarity where it's so clear what your priorities are and it's so clear what winning looks like on your scorecard, and then to be hitting those outcomes and to be doing that during COVID, I think that's what all of us should be striving to do. And so I wanted to say thank you. I'm grateful for the chance to work with you. That's it. Oh, can we help you with anything?
I'm sorry?
Oh, I asked Shar if we could help her with anything.
Okay.
I think, as always, we've outlined kind of our risk to our programmatic outcomes, and they're what you talked about. Early childhood education workforce. We know the biggest challenge that providers are having in reaching 4 to 5 stars and reaching high quality is maintaining and retaining qualified staff. We know that is not just here, but all over the system, right? And we appreciate being able to partner with the Workforce Development Council to try to address that in the teacher pipeline as well. And I think more of what we're doing at every opportunity to talk about how we get kids enrolled, how we tap in kids that we may not have reached, how we talk to kids who may not think they're eligible and families and ready, and say there's an opportunity to at least have a conversation with you. I think the other thing that we have to recognize is that we know it has taken a lot more human capital to get us here, right? So it looks very different for us this year than we have in previous years when we look at staff augmentation that we've had to do, hours we've had to spend to really being a touch out to people. And I think as much as we can continue to realize we may be moving out at the height of COVID, the impact of that is going to remain in the early childhood education field and among community providers. And our goal and our targets are set very strategically to say that we may not be in a growth mode right now. We're in a stabilization mode. And our commitment is to make sure that we don't lose community providers. And if providers may make that challenging decision, that we figure out how that impacts the system and try to mitigate it.
Thank you. Mr. Messer, followed by Ms. Bolton.
Yes, I'll be quick because some of the comments were made, but I joined this board. It's coming up on 4 years, or this is the 4th year, and we were just in the infancy of the partnership and collaboration between Cincinnati Preschool Promise and Cincinnati Board of Education. And I love that we've had these meetings with the two boards together and talked and dreamed and put that work together, and the fruit of that labor is right here before us. And I can't think of anybody better than you, Shara, for the job. We're so happy to have you there. And of course, Ms. Brooks is just a rock star, and to have you two focus on that makes me very confident that we're doing the right thing for our kids. I love the ambassador program. And what you touched on, I am a little concerned about some of our community providers as it relates to COVID and things that everybody else is dealing with. So anything we can do to help them, I think CPS is definitely willing, because we can't do this work alone. There's a lot of babies out there in our community providers, and we want to see them obviously come to CPS, but we need them to help fill gaps and provide, frankly, some services that we can't provide. So we just really appreciate that partnership, and thank you for the update today.
Thank you, Ms. Bolton.
Yes, just to follow up on that, and I'll try to get through it without coughing, but I do think that we can find an even deeper partnership, even though we in many ways are competitors as well as collaborators. I think coming out of COVID, we have to aggressively capture the market of preschool families. And we have to do it together. And I won't necessarily make it an assignment, but the reality is, as we get ready to do this, as well as being competitors and collaborators, we have to find every family that needs us. And we have to start doing that now.
Okay. Well, just to sort of end the conversation, Ms. Bolton, I think all the points made were well stated. I think to add to that, it just reminds me that we probably need to set our first this year collaboration meeting, which we're a little behind on that. I was actually going to talk about it a little bit in the inquiries and updates later on in the agenda, but we will work on that. And I think, Ms. Bolton, this will be one of the topics that maybe we could put on the agenda to discuss. Okay, any additional questions or comments from board members? All right, so as usual, Ms. Jackson, great job. Thank you for the information, and we look forward to talking with you soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Okay, our final presentation, Deputy Superintendent Amont.
Yes, this is our health and safety update. Ms. Sarah Trimble Oliver. Sarah?
We can't hear you, Sarah. We're not hearing, we can't hear. Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, so sorry about that. So we do have a health and safety update tonight, and we are going to focus on community and CPS COVID data. On our next slide, we have our CPS COVID cases, 422 confirmed student cases, and 565 confirmed staff cases, with 6 detected in-school transmissions. On the next slide, we have our city daily new cases epidemiological curve, On the curve at the bottom, this is our daily cases per 100,000. And as of yesterday, we were at 25.9 daily cases per 100,000. So an encouraging trend continues with that rate continuing to decline. On the next slide, you will see our past few weeks of history. Out of the last 14 days, 11 of them have been a decreasing in the 7-day average. Moving to the next slide, the positivity rate. We are at 8.4% for the city and 9.7% for the county outside of the city. And then the last measure, we are still at 1 day average length to get positive test results for the city. The next slide shows for our community of Hamilton County schools overall. In the last week, there were 120 new student COVID cases in public schools and 51 new staff cases in public schools. And a quick update on vaccines, hot off the press from Ms. Susan Bunty. We are at 69.1% of our organization has been vaccinated with the first dose. And then our second doses are scheduled to begin this Saturday, the 20th. And finally, last Friday, on February 12th, the CDC issued a new document called Operational Strategy for K-12 Schools Through Phased Mitigation. And this is a new set of recommendations for schools that have been updated to reflect the latest science and evidence about COVID transmission in schools. And it does include essential elements of safe school operations, as well as new categories of community transmission rates. And so we're going to be debriefing with our health advisors on this new document and the new recommendations later. And we'll be prepared at a later date to provide an update to you on any implications that we might have to our district safety plan and or any information to help inform our future plans for opening schools. And that concludes the presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Trimble Oliver. Comments, board members, Mr. Messer?
Yes, thank you. You are definitely a steady beacon in this crazy storm of COVID, so thank you for that. You know, I think that last piece you touched on is probably the most important thing, in that, you know, if you're a parent, school board member, teacher, any of our stakeholders, people are reading that document and trying to see what that means. And I think the sooner we can do a public discussion, and it's almost like, could we have a forum where we have people actually have it presented and have a discussion, and maybe we have some teachers and maybe some administration and maybe some other community people to talk about what this means? Because, you know, it's funny for me to watch on social media. I have these friends who read this in the document, and then these friends read this. Now, they're all my friends, but they read something very different in the same document. And I think the aha for me was, we've got to get everybody to start to look at the same things and have kind of at least a discussion on how we can come to consensus on what the guidance is, so then we can make plans. It's, you know, like the superintendent said in one of her presentations, if you want to go quick, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I think this is an opportunity for us to use what I think is a document that's got a lot more credence than maybe they had before, or I'll just say previously. Now that we're looking at the science and actually building plans for the nation, I think that would be something that would be very interesting for me, because I really want to understand that data. And I think it's a discussion versus kind of a read and a line, and bringing our stakeholders together, I think, is an important part. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Mr. Morosky, followed by Ms. Bates.
I would just second a bulk of what Vice President Messer just said. I've read that document, the long one, and the executive summary. I do think, however, the one thing I may be a little different on is I do think it's pretty clear regarding the numbers and spacing and mitigation techniques, and when you are virtual and when you're in person. Now, that being said, just like Mr. Messer, I see the same interpretation go every which way. But it is good to see some clear direction from the CDC, which, again, not to belabor the point, but to echo Vice President Messer, it's amazing what can happen when you have a change of leadership that prioritizes public health. So I think the document's pretty clear. I'm happy to hear that Dr. Mean and Dr. Khan will look at it, and we can hopefully, as soon as possible, have that discussion so that we can develop some metrics for when this happens, when that happens, that happens. So thank you again, Ms. Trimble Oliver. Appreciated the update.
Thank you, Ms. Bates, followed by Ms. Bolton.
Well, at our Saturday meeting, I did make the assignment to develop the metrics, and it was assigned to the administration to come back to the board with that. So this is very timely that this was released, but I know that assignment was not made very long ago. I know that these guidelines just came out, but can you give us an idea as to when you might be able to present us with some guidelines and criteria using all these metrics?
Yes, I believe after the assignment was made on Saturday, the superintendent was hoping that we could come back to you within 2 weeks with that.
Okay. Ms. Bolton, followed by Mr. Lindy. Ms. Bolton?
Gotcha. I had to let the pups out. I remain, how shall I say it, confused based upon just what a number of my colleagues have mentioned, is that you interpret data based upon your perception. So one group that wants kids to return can read this data one way, and the other group that reads it that they don't want them to return reads it another way. Unfortunately, it's the alternative universes that some people are living in, and so that's why I trust so greatly our experts who have proven their objectivity, like Sarah Trimble Oliver and our superintendent. I have a question based upon the CDC and new guidelines. I don't see that they are that new, in that they seem to reflect what we've been living through, certainly since August, as to our advice. The new piece is, at least to my lay person's perception, is that they are now including a much more specific community spread influence than they used to. And I would like if Sarah could answer that. Is that, at least that's my, again, layperson, and I'm trying to be as objective as I can. Is that the new piece? Because everything else, I honestly think we've been addressing, whether it's ventilation or whether it's 6 feet or whether it's masking. I mean, when people are like approaching this in network news and other news items like this was a brand new thing. I saw an awful lot of whatever we've been doing already, except their emphasis now, to which has been Mr. Murawski's emphasis throughout, the community spread piece. Am I reading that wrong? I'm understanding it wrong?
You're correct, Ms. Bolton. A lot of the mitigation strategies in that document are not new, and they're what we've been planning for all along. The one interesting addition is their emphasis on screening testing, and they even have 2 different recommendations of learning modes based on whether you're doing screening testing or not. So I would say that would be the most significant change from my read so far. But again, I do want to be able to consult more with our health advisors.
And where are we, as we not necessarily look at all of our districts, but as we look at the Walnut situation, or where are we? Because I know Mrs. Bates and I have talked about the screening testing and what have you before. Where are we on the screening testing?
Well, you may remember that we did implement screening testing for our staff in prior months, but Ms. Bunty and I are in discussions with several organizations about how we might be able to implement that for both students and staff, modeling off of what some other states have already done.
And what is the grants that, if I might, Madam President, what's the grant that we got to trace or track, or what was it that we have received in the last couple of months?
I'm going to have to defer to Ms. Bunty if she is able to respond to that.
And I may be mistaken, so that's why I'm asking.
So there are a few grants out there. One is the Test and Protect through the county, and that's the one that's helping to support, yes ma'am, that's supporting testing and protect, or testing our adult staff. And then there's another grant that the health department received that possibly could test students in terms of surveillance testing, but we're exploring that with them.
Because I do know, going back about 3 months, particularly Mr. Lindy in our Health and Safety Committee talking about testing and what would it take necessarily to do that testing. So I'm interested in so you're saying the screening piece is kind of a newer development, and I'm saying that community spread piece is a new development. Thanks, I appreciate that.
Okay, so it looks like we have Mr. Lindy next, Mr. Morosky, and then Ms. Bowers. But I just want to remind people, we just got done saying it's all new. It just came out. Melanie made an assignment. We just said, let's wait until we have a chance so that, and I think Ms. Trimble Oliver said maybe 2 weeks, but what appears to be happening is that we're starting to dissect it now. So, I mean, you're entitled to your comments and your opinions, but please keep that in mind that we still have to allow our staff to do what we're asking them to do. And then if we want to dissect it at a next meeting or a meeting in 2 weeks, let's do that. I just want to be considerate of our time and sensitive of our time. Mr. Lindy and Mr. Morosky and Ms. Bowers.
Thanks. Mine is a different topic, President Jones, so I think you will appreciate it. Sir, you were just sharing that 69% of staff had been vaccinated. Was that the right number? For the other 31%, can you just talk about who they are? Are they people who decided they didn't want to do it? Are they people who wanted to but didn't have access to a vaccine? Are we not sure yet? I'm trying to decide how I feel about 69%. And I think it probably depends on why the other 31 are the other 31.
Yep, and again, I'll have to call on Susan to be able to respond to that.
So vaccinations are a highly personal decision. So there are many within our organization. Town hall that we had with Dr. Odell Owens, who was absolutely amazing, and received medical information from him and made the decision to go ahead and receive the vaccination. There are some folks who, for medical reasons, cannot participate in vaccinations, and we have many staff members who've unfortunately had COVID, and you have to wait a 90-day window before you're able to receive a vaccination. Those folks, our staff members, will be working through their primary care physicians in order to receive the vaccination. So those are some of the reasons that that number wasn't 100%.
Great. So I'm right in thinking then that this is really good news, that it's not the case that there are a bunch of people out there who really wanted to get it, but we couldn't provide it for them.
Absolutely. So and I can say with great confidence that if you were a staff member in Cincinnati Public School, you had multiple opportunities to be able to get a vaccination. Yes.
That's great. And I just want to say thank you for the enormous amount of work that I imagine that had to have been. Thank you.
It was an incredible team. Thank you.
Mr. Morosky.
Thank you, President Jones. And at the risk of violating your comments about not dissecting the document, it was just something.
Please don't.
I won't.
Go ahead.
Ms. Bolton said, and I think Ms. Bolton is valid. in her comments about not a real dramatic shift in some of the mitigation techniques. And so this would be for Ms. Trimble Oliver. I'm making assumptions that you looked at it though, so maybe I shouldn't. But it did seem to me that one of the things that was glaringly different than the CDC of past was that there were actual recommendations for public school districts to do X, Y, and Z if A, B, and C condition existed, as opposed to before, i.e. the graphic that I know we've all seen passed around numerous times. And again, back to Ryan's point, and used to say whatever you may want it to say, but saying if you have this amount of cases, these schools should be remote. That seemed different to me as far as like a unique part of it. So I don't even know if that was a question. I maybe it was a response to.
Point well taken. I mean, yeah, I think hopefully we'll have a discussion like this where we can really begin to look at what it says and what's different and what are the implications. So it's all good. Ms. Bowers, final comment?
I yield my time back, President Jones.
I didn't want to talk you out of it now. Okay. All right. Anything else then regarding that presentation? Okay. Thank you so much, Ms. Trimble Oliver. All right. So we're going to move on now to our hearing of the public. We are now at the item on our agenda for hearing the public. Consistent with the state's direction to minimize public gatherings, we are convening this video conference call to include opportunity for public comment. Each speaker will limit their time to 1 minute, 30 seconds, and will direct all comments to the presiding officer. Consistent with the board's bylaws, the board has the ability to limit the hearing of the public on any single issue and will exercise the right to do so if needed. We respectfully ask employees of the district again to direct all questions, concerns, and comments regarding district return to in-person learning to your building representative, your building leadership, or your district safety hotline. Once a request to speak has been granted, you will be invited to enter. Please click on the camera icon to go interactive. Again, provide your name, your affiliation to the district, your school community, your topic, and your contact information for direct responses. This request is consistent with the board protocol, and we appreciate your compliance. We reserve the right to not permit you to speak if you do not comply. Again, each speaker will have 1.5 minutes to speak and may only speak once. When the timer goes off, your time is up. Please refrain from discussing any personnel items. After speaking, you will briefly see the welcome screen again as you transition back to the live stream meeting. We ask that your public commentary be respectful of all of those listening in. And Mr. Hoyne is going to help us out tonight with the invites. Thank you.
Yes, our first speaker is Chrissy Little, followed by Lee Salinger, followed by Sylvia Nelson. Go ahead, Ms. Little.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Hi, my name is Chrissy Little, and I'm a mom of 5. And I would like to hear a clearer plan on how we are going to get all of our students in person 5 days a week. And I think it's really important that we remember the invisible kids who desperately need to be in schools. Ms. Jones, I know you, for example, spent 40 years in mental health services. An alarming percentage of CPS families are in homeless shelters. We don't want to think about the violent things that are happening to the most vulnerable kids. And so to cope, we are making them invisible, but it is our duty to represent them and to see them. School is a respite for so many kids. I see Mr. Bell in the classroom and Principal Chambers, Miss Sharon in the cafeteria, and they see these invisible kids every day. They love our kids in a way that they aren't going to get anywhere else. Governor DeWine called out CPS for breaking our commitment. We need a commitment for this year, We need a commitment for next year. I'm asking, I want to understand the plan, the criteria to get back in person 5 days per week this year and next year. Thank you for your leadership.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. Again, please, just a reminder, when you come on, please introduce yourself and what your school community is and your topic, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Lee Sellinger, followed by Sylvia Nelson. Go ahead, Lee.
Hi, thank you. My name is Lee Sellinger, and I am a parent of children at Walnut Hills and Hyde Park School. I am calling in support of returning Walnut Hills back in the blended form that you guys agreed upon in the state's vaccine agreement. I am also calling in support of continuing our reopening plan that has started earlier this month. I'd like to highlight, because I think you guys have done an excellent job securing the buildings and the staff. I've been looking around, and here's what I have. We have ventilation upgrades. We have water upgrades. We have student testing, staff testing, including rapid tests. We have nurses in every school. We have isolation, well-check protocols, and compliance data being collected now. We have plexiglass barriers for many classrooms. We have adequate PPE and hygiene supplies. We have backup staffing. We have remote-only instruction. We have CDA. We have streaming. We have staff leave options. And you've kept all the staff, which is excellent. And we don't have the 6 feet for a full return, and Walnut doesn't have 6 feet for even blended. But I did notice on February 3rd, you guys have already adopted, and I quote, 6 feet when feasible and a 3 feet minimum as each room allows in the CPS COVID plan. So I'm happy with 3 to 6 feet. I think schools, we need to open, we need to continue. Our rolling start has been excellent. We need to include Walnut Hills. And finally, I forgot, we have a fully vaccinated staff, and those little kids need
Thank you, Ms. Sellinger.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Sylvia Nelson, followed by Kim V, followed by Gilda Vargas Adams. Go ahead, Ms. Nelson.
Good afternoon. My name is Sylvia Nelson. I'm a parent at Walnut Hills High School. We understand that we are in a pandemic. This is not going away. Walnut Hills is the only school who is not in session. Our kids need to be in school. We understand that there is a bandwidth issue across CPS, and we would like the board to allow Walnut to enable Walnut to explore site-specific solutions to solve the bandwidth issue to stream classes. This would allow Walnut Hills students who want to be in school to do so, and those who do not feel comfortable to stay home. This would also allow for instruction to continue even during quarantine and allow Walnut Hills to be consistent with the rest of the district of being in school and maintaining the instructional time that is so important. This is the ideal solution. However, my belief is that it is imperative that Walnut Hills students get back into the building in some fashion as soon as possible. We want our students in class, and we want to know the plan to get Walnut Hills back in school 5 days a week as soon as possible. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Kim V, followed by Gilda Vargas Adams. Go ahead,
Hi.
Kim.
Hi, my name is Kim Von Bargen. I'm an alumni, a parent, and a staff member at Walnut Hills High School. I'm urging you to keep Walnut Hills remote. I am urging you to follow the new CDC guidelines. Community spread is such a big indicator of what the safe distance is in our school. And I have to say, I'm very impressed by what the board said today about looking through those guidelines, so thank you. But I want to make note, the board keeps using the daily average, which sounds like a relatively low number. The CDC guidelines talk about a weekly average, so you need to multiply your daily number by 7, which is a much more scary number than what you're broadcasting. And lastly, there are many people who want to stay remote at Walnut Hills, and we keep being told by our other argument that we should go to CDA. We have shown that CDA is not a viable option for our students. But you know what? There are 14 high schools in CPS that are not neighborhood schools that have blended learning. If people want their children into school, they can go to those schools that are having in-person blending learning for the last 13 weeks of the year and not lose their spot at Walnut Hills. Thank you, board members. I really appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wenbargen. Our next speaker is Jilda Vargas Adams, followed by Jillian Whitaker, followed by Anna Schlosser. Vargas Adams.
I'm Jilda Vargas Adams. I am a parent of 2 Walnut Hills High School students and a pediatrician. I'd like to begin by thanking the board for all that you do, but especially for listening to the community voices and particularly the science when you move to a district-wide physical distancing standard of 6 feet for now and to 3 feet when feasible, and protecting especially the students and staff at Walnut. I'd also like to encourage the board to do 2 more things. One is to go ahead and commit to using the new CDC guidelines to direct return to in-person instruction. They clearly describe what needs to happen. Yes, we are currently in red, but we are moving in the right direction. And if our community can act appropriately and continue to diminish community transmission, there is a clear path to 5-day-a-week in-person instructions, at least for our elementary students. Secondly, however, I do think that this board needs to find a solution for Walnut that supports adequate instructional time and adequate distancing. Walnut is different in good and bad ways, and Walnut requires unique solutions. The best option would definitely be an investment in technology so students can choose to attend class online or in person with their classmates and their teachers. I encourage you to partner with the community for solutions to this particular challenge. And again, I thank you for your service and your attention to our kids.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is, I believe, Jillian Whitaker, followed by Anna Schlosser, followed by Owen DeRico. That Miss Whitaker. Go to Anna Schlosser, followed by Owen DeRico, and then we'll come back to Miss Whitaker if she's.
All right. Hello, my name is Anna, and I'm a junior at Walnut Hills High School. To those who voted to keep Walnut Hills remote last week, thank you. Sorry, my camera went off. Okay. At this time, it is clearly unsafe for students to return to Walnut Hills with greatly compromised social distancing measures, with desks only 2 feet apart. Additionally, going back to in-person instruction means less instructional time and collaboration for the students like me. Additionally, thank you for your thoughtful response to our governor, and I'm glad that my siblings are currently back into other CPS schools with the appropriate 6 feet social distancing. But please continue to follow the science and keep Walnut Hills remote. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Owen DeRico, followed by Jillian Whitaker, followed by Lauren Sample. Go ahead, Mr. DeRico.
All right. Hello. Am I visible?
Yes, you are. Go ahead, please.
All right. Hello, school board. My name is Owen DeRico. I'm a sophomore at Walnut Hills High School, and I am speaking here on behalf of the Young Activists Coalition. Once again, alongside all of my fellow students, parents, and teachers, I would like to implore you to take into account the best practices as have been outlined by the Centers for Disease Control and keep Walnut remote and continue to consider taking measures that will keep our students safe in Walnut Hills and elsewhere. It has been demonstrably the case that these measures to push for 3 feet or less, and many other measures, especially considering the state of transmission and cases within our county, are, again, as I've said before, absurd. And they are just in blatant disregard of what we are being told is safe. So once again, please just listen to what you are being told by your community, teachers, students, and parents. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll try again with Jillian Whitaker, followed by Lauren Sample.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes, please go ahead.
Hi, sorry. I'm Jillian Whitaker. I have 3 students, one at Walnut, one at Covedale, and one at Dater. I decided to speak today solely as a reminder that we promised at the beginning of the pandemic to follow science. The science doesn't care about politics. It doesn't care about campaign contributions. It doesn't care that the governor has decided to single out Walnut Hills. The science speaks for itself, and I know that we all talked about the guidelines and how we're not going to talk about them yet. But last week at the meeting, there were several board members who said we can't wait on the CDC, and I urge you to please reconsider that. You have the guidelines right in front of you. I think that they're pretty clear. I would urge you to remember that the only person on your board that I'm aware of with a public health background is Mike, and the CDC guidelines follow what he has been saying this whole time. I know there's a lot of political pressure, but I need you to remind you that you work for the parents and the students, not for the governor who's holding the vaccine hostage and attempting to shame you into sending teachers back into an unsafe environment. Mike DeWine doesn't have an advanced degree in epidemiology, but everybody who works at the CDC does. So please trust the science, please trust their education, please trust their backgrounds. According to the data, over 3 million children have been diagnosed with COVID, over 99,000 of which were just diagnosed last week. But only 11% of states are reporting their children's testing numbers. We can then extrapolate that the number of kids with COVID is much higher. We have no idea how many children have been impacted. And with the new variants coming out, there have been 30 deaths because of...
Thank you.
Sorry, that's my time.
Thank you, Ms. Whitaker.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Lauren Sample, followed by Yusuf Munir. Go ahead, Ms. Sample.
Hi, I'm a parent of 2 students, and I just want to say that I hope CPS continues with, our opening plan and gets, all the grades back into school as quickly as possible. And also, I would like to see a plan or what criteria we need to meet to get back to 5 days in person. Sarah Trimble Oliver presented the health data. Everything is moving in the right direction. Our teachers are getting vaccinated. They're going to get their second doses started within the week. So this is all good news and all encouraging and allowing us to return back to 5 days. So I just would like to know what is the criteria so that, for when we can get back to 5 days so that we can continue to get all of our students in the building and have in-person learning. Thank you.
So our next speaker is Yusuf Munir.
Hello, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Hello, my name is Yusuf Munir and I'm calling right now. I'm a senior at Walnut Hills High School and the president of Young Activists Coalition. Today I want to start off with a very, very simple question. Board members, how many feet apart are all of you right now? Are all of you inside the CPS board building right now? Are all of you meeting in person at the 6 feet that are the minimum according to the CDC? Or are you all sitting in the safety of your homes? Because there's a pandemic, because it's not safe, there's a reason why public comments are online. I'd ask that you take the same amount of regard that you have for your own lives, for the kids, for the children that you are responsible for, and for the parents that trusted you, for the parents whose trust you betrayed. We ask that you take care of us as much as you take care of yourselves. That's not a hard demand. That's not anything too much to ask. That is the bare minimum. You owe us this. Every single one of you. You owe us this. 6 feet is the minimum, and the CDC, according to CDC data, high schools and middle schools should not be going back unless there is low community spread, which there is not in Hamilton County, and you can ensure that there will be 6 feet of distancing at all times. You can ensure that at CPS schools. I want to end with one simple comment. We are here today not just advocating for Walnut Hills High School. We are here advocating for all CPS students, parents, teachers, and the entire Cincinnati community, because everyone will be affected by this horrible decision to send kids back before it is safe. Everyone wants to be back in schools, but we can't do that until there's a plan that has teacher, parent, and student consent.
Thank you, Mr. Munir.
Our next speaker is John Klingler. Go ahead, Mr. Klingler.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, guys, I'm exhausted.
I'm a teacher at Aiken.
Can you, teacher at Aiken, thank you. Go ahead.
This has been the most exhausting year, far more than my first year teaching. Is my 6th year. I'm so tired of being jerked around. I just want to remind you, this hybrid model education is far inferior to remote education. The students will now only receive 2 days of instruction, and the attendance is a nightmare. It was in the past when we went back, and it will continue to be. Moreover, I don't understand why we didn't decide to call this entire week remote over the weekend. It was very obvious there was going to be a huge snowstorm. It was very obvious that all this was going to happen. There's a snowstorm coming tonight. You guys are at home. We still don't know if we're in school tomorrow. Teachers have to plan an in-person lesson and a remote lesson. And you're expecting students to go out in the snow, maybe one day Friday, with these sidewalks that won't be plowed, stand in 15-degree weather for their first day of school. Come on. It just seems completely and utterly compassionless the way you've been treating families, teachers, and students all together. We understand it. We're in the building. These parents that have been speaking, the ones that are saying, go back.
Thank you, Mr. Klingler.
Okay, our last speaker is Steve Simon, followed by CFT President Julie Sellers. Go ahead, Mr. Simon.
Okay, thank you to the board. I'm hoping that you'll reverse the decision you made a week ago to exclude Walnut from the return to in-person instruction. I've heard from so many families throughout CPS are excited to have their kids back in school among their friends and their teachers, except Walnut, which was an obvious violation of the commitment the superintendent made to the governor to allow Walnut teachers to get prioritized vaccinations and then say they don't have to go back to school. I understand the concern for the teachers, but surely by the time these vaccinations, the second shot and the time afterwards, which I understand is March 10th, surely by then these Walnut kids will be back in school. It is closing in on a year that they have set foot in that building. There's 7th graders and 9th graders who are Walnut students who have never been in the building. And of course, the seniors have never set foot either. We, though, as parents who are ready to send our kids back, we want to and have tried to brainstorm to find ways to address the concerns of the other parents. And we found it, live streaming. It is not unknown. Districts throughout Greater Cincinnati are doing live streaming. Sycamore and Winton Woods. Why in the world CPS and specifically Walnut cannot do it? We also understand Clark Montessori has a plan. It's a way to get the kids back in the building and those families who don't want their kids to be in the building to learn remote with the same teachers. It's a win-win solution. Please dialogue with us. Mr. Messer.
Thank you, Mr. Simon. Thank you.
Thank you. Our last speaker is CFT President Julie Sellers.
Hello, everyone. There's just 3 quick comments this evening. You all know where I feel about making sure that we do follow the criteria of the CDC requirements. I do hope that there is a committee that is being formed that we can develop what that criteria looks like and what are the requirements, especially based on community spread, because it is something that we must follow. There are people who are ignoring that part of it, of what is safe. They are reading parts of it, but it's not in totality. So especially for the high schools, this is very dangerous in our area. But the second thing I want to talk about is employees have, again tonight, employees were told not to speak, but employees have every right to speak on matters of public concern based on their individual First Amendment rights. Many employees within our district, we are a large entity, are taxpayers within the city. We are parents of students. We are members of the community. And we have the right to speak up on matters of public concern. And I don't like the idea of employees feeling that they are intimidated to speak up, even when it concerns their own children. We did have one teacher speak this evening, and I'm very happy about that. I'm happy that you can hear a direct perception of what it feels like to be in the classroom with all of these changes that are happening. As we have found out this week, sometimes we're told very late when there is going to be a snow day. If the schools are going to be open on snow days, which I understand many districts are doing that, many are not. But if we are going to be open, I do think that you need to have the respect to have the communication with employees and families ahead of time so that they can set up at home their technology. For children, they have to be able to figure out where in their household they're going to have their stuff set up, and that cannot be done at 6 o'clock in the morning. And then as far as early hiring, I am happy that Sarah Brody did her presentation about early hiring, and I'm happy that the district is focused on early hiring. One of the areas that we must focus on is that the very first step of any hiring process is to know how many people are we going to have to hire. In the past, schools received their staffing sheets and budgets before Christmas break, and that was mid-December, so that they could start talking about it. As far as CFT is concerned, we would be perfectly happy to start hiring in January or February if we can move the process early enough. But as of now, schools still don't have their staffing sheets to know if they're going to be hiring someone next year or not hiring someone next year. So the longer schools are delayed with getting their staffing sheets, the later the process begins. And I know everybody likes to say, oh, it's because of CFT why we can't, the transfer rounds why we can't hire. No, we want to hire early. We want to hire as many people as possible, as early as possible. But we have to start the process early enough for it to become realistic. And I don't believe that anybody here on the board or even in central office has a true understanding of the process of what goes on in schools. And schools must have that information in December so that they can start the process of planning of who are we going to have to replace, where are our vacancies going to be, and what are the certifications so that they can start really thinking about what certifications they're going to be having to look for. And so I'm glad that Sarah is working on that. And we do have to make sure that what we are doing is providing the support for our early teachers and even mid-career teachers as they change grade levels or subject areas. So I'm glad that this is a conversation that we have started, and I hope that next year we can begin the process much earlier than what we've done this year and last year. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Sellers. We don't typically make comments after hearing of the public, but I do want to clarify something for our public knowledge. When we were first hit by the pandemic and we closed schools on March 13th of 2020, from that point on, we have allowed any person who wanted to speak at hearing of the public has been allowed to speak at hearing of the public. Our bylaws define the business meeting as just that. It is a business meeting that we are required by law to have a section of public hearing. In Ohio Revised Code, there is clear distinction between what a public hearing is and what a public forum is. public hearing allows for members of our community, including teachers, to speak. So the board has never disallowed anyone to speak. And as a matter of fact, we have been much more than flexible because the policy says that any 10 people who speak on a single topic can utilize up to 30 minutes to speak. Now, had we implemented that in the way that it's stated, then only 10 people at any given time can speak on this subject, which means that the hundreds, literally hundreds of people who may want to speak on this issue would not be able to speak. And we were encouraging, we have never said teachers could not speak, but we have encouraged teachers to use other means and other venues because that's the way it's written in the bylaws. If you look at the bylaws under board staff communication, it very clearly states that. We will continue to operate the public hearing in a way that we are able to manage so that we can conduct board business. We will continue to include public hearing, and we will continue to be as flexible as we need to be able to manage the time and the meetings. So that's what I wanted to do in terms of responding to the concerns that have been expressed. This is really not, I don't want this to be a full-fledged discussion, Mr. Messer. If you have one quick comment, I'll allow it. But other than that, I don't want it to go any farther than that.
Well, I think it's also another clarification. We made a policy that when our schools were in session, we would be in session. And our schools were not in session today, so we are not. The other meetings, okay, we have been. So I just want to clarify. I think it's easy to pull things and support narratives, but we are not in person because our kids are not in person today. Thank you.
That's a good clarification, point needed. Thank you. All right. So we're going to move on. Announcements. Does anyone have any kudos? Okay, I saw 4 hands. Mr. Morosky first, and we'll go Mr. Morosky, Ms. Bowers, Mr. Messer, Ms. Bolton.
This is a version of a kudo. I would like to, and if I may, I am not wont to do this, as my colleagues know. I'm not this dumb, but on behalf of all my colleagues, it's not a comment I would say often, but on behalf of all my colleagues, I would love to wish a very happy birthday to Pat Bruckner, who is one of...
Oh, stop. That's a community kudo.
It is a community kudo.
There you go.
It's okay.
Happy birthday to Pat Bruckner. She is also the administrative liaison to the policy committee that I chair. And for those who don't know, Pat Bruckner does a lot of the work that nobody sees, documents that the public-facing documents you all receive, links to emails, all kinds of stuff, you know, that you couldn't even imagine. So, Pat, we love you. Happy birthday. We appreciate you so much.
Thank you. We would sing, but that would not be nice. So, anyway. Okay. Let's see, Ms. Bowers.
Yes, I want to give a kudos to our board in general for a very productive work group on Saturday. How we were able to get through that process and put some things on the table. And I just thought it was very very impactful for me to have that conversation and to move toward the next steps in our strategic planning. So kudos to all of us as a team.
Thank you. Mr. Messer?
Yes. Like my colleagues, we've been getting lots and lots of communications from stakeholders, lots of which we try to respond to. And in one of those responses, the parent responded and said, I just have to give a shout out because as much as it feels like chaos to us, our teachers are doing a fantastic job in front of my children. And that is Mrs. Deaver and Mrs. Plattner at Carthage. And I just want to congratulate them because she took the time to send that to me. And I think everybody knows Miss Dessa, Miss Davenport walk on water. My kids, whether it's computer school or building school, they're excited to go. And I hear this every day. that no matter what's going on, there is a common thread that our teachers are just calming the waters for our kids, and we can't thank them enough. And so today, Mrs. Deaver and Mrs. Plattner, thank you specifically for being called out by a parent.
Thank you. Ms. Bolton?
I have a couple. One, I want to thank all the families and students that have felt that communicating with us can make a difference. And even if we've agreed or disagreed with you or taken a different course of action, you know, we're still practicing democracy here, and that's important to this retired civics teacher. So thank you for that, particularly the students that are trying to influence what we do. I find that great. I also want to compliment, and I know this sounds self-serving, but very frankly, we're almost at a year that this board has been put in an internationally critical decision-making environment. And no matter what we do, we upset every group of people possible. But we keep doing, I think, what we think is the right thing. And I hope that, to the point that President Jones often says, everybody needs a little grace here. And I feel like maybe we've turned the corner a bit. So thank you for all the folks that have tried to influence us, some of which have been successful, some haven't. But most particularly, I want to thank the leadership team administratively for doing what they do 24/7, which is remarkable. And I found out this past week that a lot of what we are doing, even with the governor yelling at our own superintendent, what we're doing is in part, as strange as it is, a model. So thank you to our superintendent, our leadership team, and our treasurer. This has been more than anybody could ever expect or prepare for. So thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate it. Okay. We're moving on. Ms. Bates, do we have any retirements?
Well, we have some from our prior meeting that I carried over because remember that was a meeting that ran so late. So I would like to acknowledge these individuals. They're from our civil service staff. Very valuable services they provided to our students, and they should be recognized on their retirement. Regina Bishop, Eugene Crawford, Sue Denny, Coy Helton, Rashawn Merchant, Ken Piedenpaul, Virginia Peters, and Linda C. Taylor. So we thank these professionals for their service to our students and wish them well in their retirement.
Thank you, Ms. Bates. Okay, so moving on to the next agenda item. I'm not sure, maybe the treasurer or Ms. Bolton, did we keep this resolution on or did we drop this resolution?
We, as I understand it, dropped it. Is that correct, Treasurer Wagner?
Yes, it's coming before the board on Monday.
Okay,
You're the
so
best.
we do not have the resolution to present tonight. Okay, moving on, Deputy Superintendent, Ms. Amat, do you have a report?
Yes, I would like to submit the written report for approval.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the revised recommendations of the superintendent? Mr. Morosky? Okay, and I don't know who's second. I think Ms. Bowers did first. Okay, any discussion?
I'm sorry, who made the motion? Everybody shouted at the same time.
Mr. Morosky motion, Ms. Bowers seconded.
Thank you.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Okay, Ms. Wagner, please call the roll.
Mrs. Bates?
Aye.
Ms. Bolton?
Aye.
Mrs. Bowers?
Yes.
Mr. Lindy?
Yes.
Mr. Messer?
Aye.
Mr. Morosky?
Yes.
President Jones.
Yes. Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the report of the treasurer?
So moved.
Is there a
Second.
second? Who seconded? I'm sorry.
Mike.
Ms. Bates?
You can give it to Ms. Bates.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay, Ms. Wagner, please call roll.
Mrs. Bates.
Aye.
Ms. Bolton.
Aye.
Mrs. Bowers.
Yes.
Mr. Lindy.
Yes.
Mr. Messer.
Aye.
Mr. Morosky.
Yes.
President Jones.
Yes. Thank you. Okay, any inquiries or updates? I have two. I'll take the ones from the floor first. Any inquiries or updates? Mr. Lindy?
President Jones, I have some thank yous and some follow-up questions about an assignment that I gave and got back from the administration. Is now the right time for that, or should I do that during assignments?
Go for it.
Go for it. Great. So this is likely, I think, for Krista. It's about the parent POSIP data that I had requested a couple of weeks ago and got back before our last board meeting. Though I'm very happy to talk to Deputy Superintendent Amat or whoever else would like to chat. I think the first thing I wanted to do is say thank you for the information and just share with the public what this is. So that this is a new tool that we are using in CPS this year. It is a survey that goes to every parent of a CPS student, I think every other week, and it has one question on it. And it goes both by email and by text message. And one question, I think, is, were you happy with your child's experience at school last week? And you can say yes, you can say no, or you can say mostly. That's it. It's one very, very simple question. And the results, I think, give us a wonderful window into the experience of the group that I think is maybe our most important group of stakeholders, which are parents. And we can cut the data to look at results by Title I schools, so schools with more low-income students, or non-Title I schools. And so I first want to say thank you for the information. And I just a couple follow-up questions. One was, if you're a parent listening to this, but you're not getting the invitation to respond to the survey, Krista, do you know who they talk to, or like how they can? I got this question by email, and I wanted to offer that advice to people.
So that's a great question. I think if they let their schools know or call customer service, that probably is the easiest way. Or Mr. Lindy, if you know who it is, you can also feel free to send it to me, and I'm glad to look into it.
That's great. So if parents are listening and they're wondering, try customer service, try your school building. If none of that works, email me, and I'll get you to Krista and make sure that we'll make sure we get you signed up.
Or me directly. That is also fine.
Or Krista directly. I think that I wanted to ask you how you felt about the numbers, how you felt about where we were.
So I think not surprised. So our understanding is that it does take a little bit longer for the Title I schools to reach the level of engagement that we'd like. So it just takes more outreach in general. So we did talk to POSIP about what would possible alternatives, not alternatives, but additional strategies be to continue to provide support to those schools and to those parents directly. So, and it really comes down to volume. So just reaching out to them more frequently, making sure they know services are available. So we are looking at those options and starting to have those communications.
Great. And just, I know the public may not have the numbers, but our response rate at the non-Title I schools is about 30%, and the response rate at the Title I schools is about 15%. And across the board for elementary school students, about 65% of parents were happy. And at the high school, about 55% of parents were happy. And so I think the last question I wanted to ask, and I appreciate the time, is if where we are today is there, where would you like to see us in a month?
Better is the short answer. So in terms of response rate, we've gone from 7%, and our goal is 45%. So by the end of the academic year. So we hope, yep. So we expect to make progress toward that. Honestly, every time we field the survey, which is every 2 weeks. In terms of sentiment, or the answer really to the happiness question that you mentioned, our goal is 65%. Technically, we've reached that, but because we don't have the response rate we're looking for, it's not as clean, I think, as we would like that 65% to be. So that really is a lag indicator that means more once we have that response rate where we want it to be.
I think that makes great sense, and I know that other people have other things they want to chat about tonight, so I appreciate the time. I think my request would be, can we talk about this again in a month after we have the next couple rounds? I'd love to see where we are and love to see how it's going. Thank you.
Glad to. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Bowers.
Thank you. Thank you, Krista and Board Member Lindy. I just have an inquiry, Board Member Lindy. Is the idea of the possible survey to gain engagement about where people are and how they feel about their school, or is the idea to extend that to identify what they're pleased with and what they might need to do better at? Is it a possibility for an open-ended question versus an open-closed question?
As I understand it, you can also say more, like if you want to share more about why you're sharing what you're sharing. But part of what's convenient about it for parents is if you just want to share a one-word answer, you can just share a one-word answer. But Krista can tell me if I'm really wrong about that.
Is that an option, Krista?
That's correct. So every survey asks the happiness question. There's another survey that we are alternating asking district-wide, or the schools actually can ask, school-specific. And then you can also give open comments, and those comments are followed up on by the schools. So whether it's, something good or I need help in some area. So it does have the flexibility for both.
Okay. Is that what parents are receiving every day?
Okay. I want to interrupt here. I understand people have lots of questions, and my suggestion is that if we want to have a detailed conversation and discussion about PASA, that we perhaps put it on another agenda with board matters and not use inquiries and updates just to get a short, brief update. So I'm just suggesting that if we have an interest as a board in hearing more about the tool, the process, and whatever, we can always add it to Monday's agenda or some other agenda.
Okay, well noted.
Okay. All right. Are we ready to move on? Any other, Ms. Bolton?
Just to catch Chairman Bowers up, it would be useful for board members to maybe see the superintendent's update. And I don't know if that was from the December minutes or from a SAC or whatever. I noticed that they were not included in tonight's minutes, and that would be helpful.
I'm sorry, are you talking about the mid-year update? I sent that to you all individually.
Right. I just think as public record, it would be great to put that if you could.
Okay, it was in the December SAC meeting minutes, open to the public. But if you wanted to reiterate that, since we really didn't go over it in SAC, we just noted that you guys had it. But it is in the SAC minutes from December.
And I'm so thrilled as a 70-year-old person that I remembered that it was December. But if you would, if you would resend that, that would be useful based upon our earlier discussion.
Okay, and I don't know if this is an inquiry update or an assignment, okay? But because Pam got here a little, Pam wasn't able to listen to the full discussion about this earlier. So I would ask that you all, the committee members, update her on that conversation or whatever needs to happen. Okay. All right.
Thank you, Madam President.
Okay, so the first update or an inquiry or update that I have, it's regarding the willingness of the board to have me move forward to coordinate with preschool promise around setting the collaboration partnership meeting. We are behind schedule on that, and I just want to make sure that we get it on the calendar. So the presentation was timely today, but we need to follow up with that. And I can't tell you right now until after I speak with the chair of the board, because it is actually their turn to host. So I just want to touch base with him to see if it's doable for them, and if so, get some idea what time frame we can schedule it. So are we okay with that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. And then secondly, I received an invitation as the representative of the board to rally, which is going to be held on February 25th. And they had asked that either I come as the board's representative to speak, or if we want to do a full board thing, we can do that. It is to whatever the will of the board is. But I am certainly willing to be the representative, and it would require us going in front of the video cam so that we can be videotaped on Monday. So if you're okay with me going, I'm good. If not, let me know if you have any other ideas about how we might do it. Are you okay with that?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, any other inquiries or updates? Okay, assignments. Okay, Mr. Lindy first.
Thanks, President Jones. I have two, but they go together. I would like our SAC committee and our policy committee to explore an alternative timeline for the superintendent for the evaluation that we use with our superintendent. I'm concerned that we don't do this currently in the way that would make the most sense and be the most helpful for the district and for the superintendent. Specifically, that we do the evaluation in the middle of the school year in March. I think we'd be in a stronger position if we could do that evaluation after we have the data on that school year, once that school year is completed.
Okay.
I think. Can I finish my I think that there are good and understandable reasons why it may have been done by March 1st in the past related to some state statutes, but that I think as we understand those state statutes better and practice of other districts, there could be a path forward that works better for everybody. And so my assignment was going to be, could those two committees research and if they see fit, propose an alternative that we could then talk about as a board.
Okay, got the assignment. Okay, next assignment, Ms. Bolton.
Yes, if member Lindy would generously agree, I would suggest, I'm totally supportive of what he's suggesting, to review and create an additional timeline. I don't want to presume that we will do something that is necessarily outside statute. So I would just suggest, instead of an alternative, if he's willing to do that, an additional or however he would like it to be worded. I don't want to do something outside of statute. I want to accomplish what he wants to do.
What would be outside of statute?
The March 1st is statute.
I think that we're discussing our part, like, is to have that discussion and then figure out something that is clearly thoughtful and good for the district and thoughtful and good by state law.
Well, however you want to word it, but I don't want to do something that is outside the law. So that's great. It's an adjustment to the timeline for the benefit of whatever. But yes,
I think we are. I think, at least I understand it. I think we all are in agreement, at least, that SAC and policy can review this, and then you all can come back
right
when appropriate. Okay.
Right.
I do have I have a couple. You have an assignment, Ms. Bolton?
I have two. One is I would like the superintendent, and she can assign this to whomever, to review the actual results of our partnership with the Hamilton County Education Service Center. We are spending millions with them. I'm sure it's justified, but I'd like to see the results of those millions. And second, I would love to see the beginning of the list or the final list of the partners that we would be engaging over the summer extension of our instructional time with our students.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Any other from the floor? I have short ones. My first one is I'd like to assign to Finance Committee and specifically to Daniel in preparation of our joint meeting with CPP to revisit the shared resolution that we had begun to work on last year so that we can prepare and be able to present when we have our meeting or put it on the agenda for our meeting. So that's my assignment regarding that. And then secondly, I don't know that we ever agreed on when committees would submit their work plans for approval. And so I'm just throwing this out there. If the second week in March, not the second week, the second meeting in March, does that give folks enough time to do it? Okay.
Yes.
So I'd
Sure.
like to assign to all of our committees to submit their work plans, their yearly work plans to the full board for approval. Okay. Anything else regarding assignments? Any other business? Okay, having no other business before us, I declare the meeting adjourned. Thank you. Yes?
Okay. Just a double second, whatever, regarding Ms. Bruckner. I appreciated Mr. Morosky's efforts, but let's double check because we couldn't even meet without her.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Have a good evening. Bye.
Thank you.